Good morning. It's Monday, September 21st, 2020, 9 a.m. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Scott. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item 3 is discussion of possible action to approve claims dated September 21st, 2020 in the amount of $165,040.01. I have a motion by Scott. Second by Doug. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 4 is discussion of possible action authorizing the chair to approve a GTSB state and community highway safety grant contract in the amount of $44,450 with Captain Jeff Mullen. Good morning.
Good morning. This is a grant that we've had for several years. The board took action earlier in the year to approve applying for it, and it's at the final stage to get it signed and sent back to them.
This seems, it's maybe a little bit higher than it has been in the past. Is that,
It's actually right about the same.
is it? Okay. Any questions? This is for overtime and,
They will pay for $37,000 overtime, which translates to about 747 hours, as well as a PBT, an in-car camera, and a radar unit.
very good.
Move to approve as presented.
So I have a motion by Santos, second by Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you.
He's all right.
Good morning. Okay. Item number 5 are items with the county engineer Keith White. Item number 5A is discussion and possible action to approve various utility permits. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning. We have 2 utility permits this morning. The first is from Windstream Iowa Communications of Little Rock, Arkansas. And they're proposing, or porpoising if you wanna read their writing, to 408 Moscow Road and 112th Street, to place a copper cable between existing pedestals, so they're essentially at the southwest corner of Moscow Road and 112th. And short, simple things. The second is from Eastern Iowa REC of Wilton, Iowa. And they are wanting to run an overhead across 215th Street, approximately a quarter mile west of Independence, for a new house that has not been built, and there is no 911 address yet. So those are the 2.
I'd move to approve. Second.
So I have a motion by Scott, second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, next item is discussion of possible action to approve plans and specifications for BROS SWAP CO7068 SE70, a bridge replacement project to construct a 110-foot by 24-foot continuous concrete slab bridge on Douglas Avenue north of Nichols.
This is just, routinely approving the plans and specs, and then we go to letting. A January 2021 DOT letting.
Okay, any questions? Not, I would accept the motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan, second by Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
I have the title sheet here, which I'll pass around for you all to sign.
Okay. Item number C is discussion and possible action to approve agreement with the Iowa DOT for county bridge federal aid swap funding. Agreement number 519 HBP swap 033 to construct a replacement bridge on Douglas Avenue over Big Slough.
It happens to be this bridge we just approved. All it is the DOT agreement to swap state dollars for federal dollars.
Keith, on that, what does touchdown point mean? Touchdown point. What does that mean?
It typically, it really doesn't have to do with the fact that the bridge raised, but typically the bridge, a new bridge might require some slight adjustments in horizontal alignment. So it's almost a leftover from the federal aid days, because counties could, whoever could decide to get creative and say, well, this bridge project goes from 3/4 of a mile that way to half a mile that way, to get that all with the federal money. But the DOT looks at it and says, you reasonably need like, this bridge is hardly raising, you need like 200 feet to touch down back to the existing. That's the point that it meets the existing
Where it
road.
connects to
And that's the point where they're not gonna participate beyond that. You might, in fact, have a division in your plans or something that you think, oh, we are gonna do something with a half-mile road beyond here, but it's gonna be purely on your nickel, not gonna be on these funds. So sort of a long explanation.
I just had never heard the term when I saw that, reading through that.
So it's an effort to constrain the locals
Yeah.
from trying to expand into federal bridge.
It really is. I've never seen it really be an issue. You know, it's conceivable they could pull it too short, and you talk to them, and they're probably gonna make it okay. Yeah, just limiting the scope of the project. You know, you might have, on our paved roads, we have paving, you know, and they're just not gonna pay for a mile of paving to hook up a bridge, you know, when they're going, the math says 400 feet's adequate.
Okay. All right, so do I have
Move to
a,
approve.
I have a motion by Santos, second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, item D is discussion of possible action to approve an agreement with the Iowa DOT for county bridge federal aid swap funding, agreement 520 HBP swap 030 to construct a replacement bridge on York Avenue over Mud Creek.
Same thing, that it's an agreement that allows us to receive state dollars for the federal dollars, which eliminates a few of the steps of federal constraint. This is for one, we haven't even started design on this bridge yet, but the state sent them both out. So, I mean, it's one we'll probably design this winter.
Move to approve.
So I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item E is discussion of possible action to approve the purchase of a 2020 F-550 Monroe Demonstrator dump plow truck in the amount of $65,943 with trade through Courtesy Ford.
Yeah, this is, we have two of these type units. They both need replaced. I had mentioned the last time that I think Mike had gone to well over 100 sites looking for locators on these things. Very hard to find. We, at this point, ended up with one, and that's where we very well may end up. This was in last year's and didn't get done. It's in this year's budget, both of these. The second one, we're probably going to look at having to, well, I guess we're still looking for a couple things, but we may have to start from zero there and get a cab chassis and get it equipped and not be able to replace it for this winter's work. But we do have one here that Monroe buys a whole bunch of these cab chassis and equips them as snow fighters and passes them out to dealers that want to sell them. So I said that's how we acquired the two that we're looking at replacing, and I said the net, we're trading in the vehicle number 6, which we think is definitely needs to go because of some issues with the turbo, and that's what I'm asking to do.
Good.
It's only one instead of two, like, it's one.
Only one. The second one, the other option, and I had thought about it anyway, but we are looking if there's a, rather than being like a tonner, you know what these vehicles are, Doug, of looking at a single axle dump truck. The city runs some single axles. I think they have Peterbilts. I think there might be a Peterbilt out there. Mack does have single axles now that we might be able to find a, for lack of a better word, a spec truck of that too. So
And this is for our the smaller areas like
Yes.
in Moscow where it's a little
Yes.
tighter corners to plow.
we've ran when North Islip, when the whole thing, North Islip 180 at Bayfield, when it was all seal coat, you don't like putting a heavy truck on the seal coats. So we had ran that with one of these two. Now that we have hot mix on part of that, I think a single axe could run that route and not have to. That work because they're close to the shop, but they're still constantly coming back for material because they can't carry a lot. So we still definitely need one smaller one to catch those small unincorporated towns.
All
I'll
right.
make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item F, projects. Do you have an update for us this morning?
Yeah, our parking lot project has finally, our second parking lot project has finally gotten underway. They've torn out all the material on the west side of our shop and have began placing the modified sub base. And we hope that they'll pour some of it, if not all of it, this week. But, I mean, it looks like the weather's gonna be favorable. The other thing that's still happening in the construction world is the east portion of G28. We're in the area of slower going now because it's all full reconstruction, which plus maintaining access to businesses there and Lutheran homes. So we have a stretch from essentially Burlington Road to the Pete Moss factory. Has to be torn out, base compacted, modified place, trimmed and paved. And then from there to Lutheran homes, same thing. So we're looking at, this is middle of September, probably several months of closure there as they do these stages. There's a lot of culverts and storm drainage and a lot of things, you know, intakes to be rebuilt, a lot of things to deal with along there.
Keith, with the weather the way, hopefully promising the way it is, are you still expecting them to be done this year, calendar year?
We are hopeful that they will be done paving this year. There's enough dirt work that goes along with it that it's really gonna be weather dependent, that there might be some work items that carry over into next year. But they should be, you know, I don't wanna say that and the
I
weather
mean, yeah,
totally goes.
weather dependent, obviously, if we, you know, can avoid the rains and the.
Yes, then they should get done this year. So I know there is a little angst for the public there, because that stretch is not available to them anymore, so they definitely have to go around now. But it's been available to them all summer. So could have started on this end and it wouldn't have been all summer. So. Questions on construction? One other, we had an inquiry from the Atalissa City Clerk about a parcel that belongs to the county off of Highway 6 in Atalissa. If you're eastbound into Atalissa and you look off to the south side of the road, you see the Welcome to Atalissa sign. It kind of looks like a park. The county owns that property. It predates my knowledge. The city's been maintaining it, but apparently there's a tree down or needs to come down, and they want to know who's going to do it since it's our property.
I believe what the property he's talking about is a FEMA, property
It
that we
is.
acquired through FEMA, yeah.
It is a FEMA parcel.
So it is our responsibility to, and looks like we have Kurt in the room, so maybe we could talk to him about that.
Say, that sounds like a conservation opportunity.
That's what you get for coming to the meeting.
I'm not sure I'd use the word opportunity.
How big a piece is that? It's gotta be really small.
No, it's like an acre.
Yeah, it's-
0.86 acres, yeah.
Well, maybe that's.
That's small.
Point
for me.
86, yeah.
It's right here, yeah.
It's a nice piece of ground.
Yeah, I know
Obviously-
exactly what you're talking
Obviously, it's right in that corner that, where when flooding happens, it can flood. But right now, it looks like a real nice park. And I don't know if the county ever had some agreement with the city, but the city apparently.
Well, that brings
What was
up,
it?
to me, a bigger conversation around all these FEMA properties and who maintains them long-term, because we have a number of them spattered throughout the county, right? Today, who's watching over those properties?
The newest ones that we got, conservation, I think agreed to do minimal maintenance on it. Some of the older ones, we had lease agreements that I think most have expired. I'd have to pull that folder out and look.
do we know if those, the lease agreements that have expired, are those individuals still utilizing those properties, or have they been?
I don't know. I think several of those are in the Gordon Dismore edition.
I think, in my mind, what we might wanna do, and this is probably a point of discussion at some point, you know, it all comes back to funding, and I don't wanna put funding challenges on any department, but I think, you know, we need to think about these properties as we get them back in long-term. How are we gonna make sure that they stay at the restricted use, and that they're cleaned up, and then we don't have dangers? And I, you know, just off the top of my head, the conservation makes some sense there, but I also understand there's costs involved with that, and the board, I think, needs to keep that in mind. And I think we have to think about that as these move forward, and they could be anywhere, right? I mean, this one right on the border of Atalissa, which you would normally think of.
Right.
So why, and I don't know where this isn't the point of that discussion, but why couldn't we just give that to Atalissa and have a contract where they have to maintain it as a FEMA project?
There's a
There's-
perpetual deed restriction and that we have to retain ownership of those and regulate
So
usage and
we
development.
can't give them like a 99-year lease or something?
Well, a lease.
We certainly could do a lease,
We can't.
and we may have done a lease at one time.
That one, I don't know.
I don't know, this dates back to '94, so
This looks like, this
That'll
seems,
be a discussion.
I think we've had discussion about these properties
We
before,
have.
and I think we probably need to codify some kind of a policy on them,
Yep.
on what we're gonna do and how we're gonna manage them, and, you know, if we turn them, if the conservation winds up being their headache, we give Curtis $1.98 and we go on our way.
Maybe we probably need to come up with a map of where they're at.
Absolutely, that's a good starting point, is take a look at what we have, and if there's any that do still have leases. I think all leases that we have expired,
And
but
we
we
would
can pull
be-
that information together as a starting point.
And we would be aware, certainly, as they come, new opportunities come out there, we know where they are, there's a process. So Eric, are you usually the genesis of that process?
For
Okay.
acquisition.
Yeah, and all of that requires board action at some point for us to accept that ownership, so. But that's probably a good starting point, is to pull together a list of all the properties and kind of what their current status is, to start that discussion. And we can certainly
I
do
kinda
that.
like the idea, even just a little bit of enforcement or eyes on them to make sure that we know what kind of activities are happening on them, cause you don't want them to be forgotten areas either. We don't need that in the county. Okay.
Is there anything I should tell the city clerk about this?
So they have a tree that they want removed at this
Yeah,
point.
it wouldn't clear, as a voice bill, wouldn't clear to me if it's down or it should come down, one of the two.
Is it a big tree or?
We don't know.
That
yet.
was,
We have Kurt look at it.
that was this weekend, haven't.
Kurt,
had time.
could we ask you to look,
We can look into it and see if it's something that our people are capable of taking down, otherwise, well, you know, that's what we do in our parks, we hire somebody to take down the large trees.
It looks like it might be pretty decent size if it's this one.
okay. Yeah, and if
I'll
it,
get the location.
If it
of
is, I mean,
And if
yeah,
it's
it's a
not,
safety-
I
Issue, we gotta get it down.
and
yeah.
if it's not, and we wind up having to contract, or either case, then I think just communicate with Nancy and Sherry and see if the general services has an opportunity to take care of that, but we need to, we certainly don't want a safety hazard out there.
Absolutely.
And it is our property, so we have to deal with it, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'll take this under other, because I'd had a conversation with Terry Holliday about Keokuk. We talked about this a while back. And I was gonna put it on the agenda for discussion this week. I didn't, because I wasn't sure who all was gonna be here and who wasn't, but anyway, I would like to have a discussion, or set up for a discussion, and I don't know what the process should be to have a proper discussion. I think we have some property owners that are interested in reopening Keokuk. It's been closed for a long time. I think there's some significant costs there. And I think, so the issue is, you fix it and maintain the road, we vacate the road, what are my options? Fix it and maintain, and then, is there a public process that we should enter into, much like we did over by West Liberty a few years back, Keith? When we said, you know,
If you wish to consider vacating it, yes.
okay. I think that at this point, it's a road that's been closed for a year and a half.
Yes, all of that. With the last flood, the last FEMA.
The stretch that floods is at least a quarter mile, isn't it, down there? Keokuk Keys.
It really, the river does what it wants to do down there. I mean,
It's a long quarter.
I know it's a good size.
It's a long quarter.
Sometimes it's all the way up to Salisbury Road,
Right.
underwater all the way to the bottom of the hill.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I've seen that,
Yeah. So,
and you're talking like a half mile.
yeah, it's probably close to half a mile.
But we're not on for action today, so I think maybe Nancy, we could put it on for
Yeah, it's fine.
a discussion, and then we can come up with a plan and give Keith some direction. I think he's been looking to the board for a couple of years on what the board policy wants to be, so I think it's probably time to have that discussion and decide what we're gonna do. Keith, would we have, and I don't wanna put you on the spot, you know, for that discussion, maybe we just have some basic numbers on,
Sure.
you know, what's it cost to maintain that, where's the average road in that area, how much is your spitball for fixing it, what really needs to be done, and then the board can have that discussion and we'll give you some direction.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does that give you time if we're like a week or 2 weeks out? What
Yes.
would be the best?
Either one,
We'll figure it out and have
Okay.
it on the week.
Yeah, I think, I'll leave it to Nancy and Keith to kind of figure out what works. I don't think there's an impending emergency on it, so I would rather take the time to do it right and make sure we kind of know what information we might be interested in. If any board members would have questions that should be answered as a part of this discussion, then maybe to forward them to Nancy so she can get them to Keith and we can have that conversation. Okay, thank you, Keith. Okay, items with Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furnace. Discussion and possible action to accept variances granted by the Muscatine County Board of Adjustment on September 11th, 2020.
There was one variance that was granted on September 11th. It was a variance for an owner of a lot in Hickory Hill subdivision off of G28 that would allow the construction of a detached garage that sits slightly in front of the existing dwelling and only 25 feet from the front property line as opposed to the normal required 50-foot variance. The Board of Adjustment found that due to the unique shape and topography of the lot, location of the existing septic system, that there was a hardship here. This lot, a solid 50% of it is ravine with trees, so it limits the yard space. Then you throw in an on-site septic system. They reviewed the proposed location and found that it wouldn't pose any site distance issues pulling out onto the subdivision road. It's not even onto a public road, but because of the ravine and the trees, they already block more of the view than this garage ever would. Also, it's already 25, would still be 25 feet back from the edge of the subdivision road right away, so it doesn't pose any traffic or site issues. So they granted variance based on found hardship.
Okay? Yeah.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item B is action to set a public hearing for Monday, October 19th, 2020 at 9 a.m. on a request from Kirk and Kim K. Latta to rezone approximately 36.79 acres in Muscatine Township from A1 Agricultural District to R1 Residential District.
Again, we're just asking to set a public hearing at this point on a rezoning request. The zoning commission heard this request on September 11th. And, it actually was not recommended for approval, but really can't go into too much discussion on it here without having a public hearing. So
Right.
we need to get that one set because the owner does wish to continue his petition in front of you folks.
Okay. So I would look for a motion to set the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan. Second by Santos. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item C is action to set a public hearing for Monday, October 19th, 2020 at 9 a.m. on a request from Alan F. or Alberta M. McCleary and Matthew L. McCleary to rezone approximately 7.21 acres in 76 Township from A1 Ag to R1 Residential.
Yep, same thing, request to set a public hearing. Public hearing was held by the zoning commission on September 11th. This is for a property off of Burlington Road. The request was rezoned from agricultural to residential. It actually was recommended for approval, and this is the next step in the process for you to set the public hearing for that rezoning.
Okay, so I have
So moved.
a motion by Nathan, second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Eric, back to the previous public hearing. So this is a part of the process. They already went before the board, and the board was recommended not to do it. I saw that, but there's still a process, so that if they want to appeal and talk to the neighbors, and if there's others that the board may change their mind, may not.
Yeah, anything, zoning commission when it comes to rezonings are recommendations. rezonings are actually considered an ordinance change, so the ultimate decision is the Board of Supervisors. I believe if there is not a positive recommendation on a rezoning, it takes a higher level, I think 4 out of 5 votes of Board of Supervisors members as opposed to a simple majority for the rezoning to go through. But yeah, rezonings can progress in front of the Board of Supervisors regardless of the decision of the zoning commission. Those are recommendations that they make to you, but you have complete say in rezonings.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
I know other is not on the agenda, but I'm just gonna brief the board just quickly on some progress of the Lower Cedar Water Management Authority. We had a meeting last week, still meeting remotely, but we have a contractor, a consultant, FIRA Engineering Consulting, that is gonna be developing the watershed plan. There was a grant that covered that. This group will be going through overseeing some water testing in various locations and just developing the overall concept plan for management of the Lower Cedar watershed. This is kind of the first step. You have to have a plan in place to go after the bigger dollars for any projects. Something I want you guys to be aware of. This plan, like a lot of watershed management authority plans, is based primarily on water quality. So when the plan is developed, you're gonna see a lot of emphasis on, nutrient reduction strategies, soil loss reduction strategies. There are some flood mitigation elements in it, but primarily it's a water quality focused plan. That's pretty common. I would have preferred to see one that was at least equal. We have a lot of issues along our Cedar River as far as flood mitigation, but it doesn't close the door on flood mitigation dollars. But water quality is a big thing in Iowa, and so I guess rightfully so, a lot of your plans are primarily focused on water quality improvement.
Well, yeah, I think, I would say some of the flood mitigation techniques help with water quality as well.
They certainly
Because
do.
you're talking wetlands in a lot of areas to restore wetlands.
So that's why I'm still optimistic that, that there may be dollars out there we can go after that would accomplish both those goals. So,
Very good.
but we're moving forward. There was a delay with like everything else with the COVID issue, but we have the contractor in place and they're working on the plan on our behalf. So,
And this contractor's fairly seasoned at these?
yeah, they've done these types of things. They had experience. We only had two contractors submit plan estimates and bids, and this one was because of their experience more in rural areas with agricultural influence. It was the one that the committee recommended to. I was on that committee that reviewed the RFP and reviewed the proposals, and this one was found to be probably more well-rounded as opposed to the other group. They had a lot more urban stream type experience. This one was well-rounded in the agricultural area, works with like soybean association folks, that type of thing. So felt that they would represent us well and do a good job for the type of watershed that the Lower Cedar is and what it encompasses.
Good, very good. Thank you, Eric. Okay, item number 7 is discussion and possible action to authorize the chair to execute a stormwater easement agreement with NPSW Enterprises LLC. I think Kurt's with us this morning to answer any questions, and as other board members are aware, I'm involved with that entity, so I will recuse myself from any votes on it.
And I assume the motion would be to authorize the vice chair in that case to execute the
I would
agreement.
recommend that.
Yeah, okay. I was just looking at it, I see that the proposed easement comes really close to the Doug Peterson property. Do we need to address that with Mr. Peterson? Is that any issue? And the second question I have is the county going to incur any maintenance liability or anything going forward?
I guess I'm confused on the Doug Peterson property, where would that?
So I'm looking at the plat, and maybe I'm not reading it right, but see, it looks like
You're talking on the south side?
yeah, it looks like it comes into it basically is going to connect the two NPSW properties, and the southwestern end, it looks like it just barely cuts the corner. It comes to the corner there, and it's real close to this gentleman's property. I don't know if that's an issue. I don't know if we need to worry about that. I was just curious.
That's an underground structure.
Right.
And it's off of the property corner, so I don't know that
Okay.
there would be any requirements there, but,
Okay.
and any structure on the Peterson property is about 350
Yeah, there's
feet
nothing
away. So
there.
that's a large ravine, in that whole area with a lot of water
Cool.
going through there.
The other question is, does the county have any potential liability either in terms of maintaining this or, you know, I guess if there's a flood or anything?
As far as the it would be the structures that are gonna fail if we have any problems.
Right.
The one structure is not on county property.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is it's the city that takes over maintenance of those. It was required by the city and their water control structures. The other would go into our wetland
Right.
that we currently have. We've had people look at it. We don't think it'll create any problems in our wetland. It actually can use some more water coming into it. After we constructed it, we never had the water in it like we wanted because of the lack of water. So actually, this will probably help us out on our wetland.
Great. Thanks.
I think, Jim, you had looked at the agreement. Did you have any concerns or, I know there's some questions whether Alan had done it prior to your,
Yeah, I was made aware of this last Thursday, I believe. Looked through the agreement, went out Friday morning myself just to get my brains to take a look at things because it's sort of confusing when you look at the paperwork and you're not sure what people are talking about. And I've had several conversations with Kurt, but yeah, Alan did look at it previously. He didn't have any objections to it. I looked at it Friday and sent back some, what I would call clarifications, questions to Kurt. On the north side, if that, the easement that's dumping into the wetlands area just serves the subdivision that they built, whether that serves a larger area because the easement gives folks the ability to enlarge, which means more water could come into that if the city some point in the future changed their plans and then inundated the wetland area. Don't know that that's a problem, but that was one question. Then on the southerly easement, which goes to the old Tim property, the area that was seeded was rutted a bit. I'm sure they seeded it when it was dry, and it really, of course, hasn't taken off, and then we got the rains, and so it kind of rutted it.
Just shows the
The basin, the reservoir where the water is intended to be captured and then drained a bit slower is in need of some repair, not that that matters. The most concerning thing to me was I read what I was sent from the city relative to the acceptance of that triangle corner for the southerly easement. And their information says that the county will keep that and maintain that. And my understanding was that would go to the city. But I did not read that as such in their proposal that was submitted to the city council last week. That would have been on page, I believe it's page 4 at the bottom. Once stormwater infrastructure is constructed and accepted by the city, the outlot will be conveyed to the county conservation board and will make this area part of the adjoining park. So it doesn't matter to me if the county owns it or the city owns it, but I understood the city was going to take it eventually and not the county because of the maintenance issue and the cost issue. So that's all I could come up with looking at it.
But wouldn't the outlet be on county property?
If you go out there, well, let's talk about the southerly outlet. The southerly outlet is buried to the retention pond that's located on a triangle corner that was purchased from Tim's so that they could build the reservoir or the retention pond. And then my understanding is that was gonna go to the county and then eventually to the city and to maintain as part of the storm sewer project, which of course then takes the county completely out of the mix. But that's not what the city proposal appeared to me to say.
the intent is that the ground goes to the county, becomes part of Powder Park. that the infrastructure, the sub-drain, that becomes part of the city. The city accepts that as part of their public infrastructure.
Okay, so I misunderstood then, that the maintenance of it will be part of the infrastructure, city responsibility. Property
Yes.
will remain county
Yes.
owned. Okay,
Yes.
then
And
that's
if-
clarification, I didn't understand that.
Well, I wonder if that's a clarification we need to add to the agreement to make sure that it's
think,
crystal
yeah.
clear.
Well, that's what I had suggested, that we have that clarification, and then if it's enlarged, that there would never be any obligation on behalf of the county to expend funds to take and increase and enlarge the system, if it ever had to be. Not that it will, but I can't say that it will. Forever's a long time. So, anyway, those were my comments. And if I misunderstood that, I apologize.
No, I think it's good
No,
comments.
that's why we have you review them,
Well.
make sure
thank
they're
you.
right.
And that's what I passed on to Jim, if they ever wanted to put more water into that wetland complex, it would require us to put in a larger larger tube going through it to get rid of the water faster. We would not want the water going over the top of it, we have a trail there.
And all of, and I know that, as part of the process, there's an NPDES, which is a DNR permit process that you have to go through to do this in the first place and be approved. So if the city were to do that, they would have to go through the same permitting process. You can't just add drainage into a structure without a permit.
And then I did hand you some pictures of that south area, before the county would, want to accept ownership of that, which they talked about, there would have to be some work done on that yet, it is not completed, And I think a lot of it is, like you said, that they probably seeded it and we got 6 or 7 inches of rain and, nothing grew until we got all that. There's some addressing that stuff there, but other than that.
So we're not putting some sort of retention pond or anything like that for all
Yeah,
this?
there is.
There is a retention pond there, that was that first picture, it's just all weeds in that. The retention pond, the initial structures and riprap and all that are, I think, good. It just needs to be, the dirt needs to be dressed up so we could get it seeded down correctly. And
We're gonna have to do that.
No,
No, they're doing.
That's what I'm
So
getting
they
at.
would
They
get
were
it all
out,
seeded
I
down.
mean, they're
correctly.
working on seeding last week. I saw that they're dressing the topsoil and seeding and working that. I
Because
don't,
we would still do minimal maintenance on it, if that structure ever failed or something, then we would go after the city, but I would have my people, maintaining that the weeds weren't getting too tall on it and stuff like that.
and in the city approval process, there's a punch list with seeding identified and all of that, and that area is on it.
Yeah, some of it might have to wait until next spring, if we continue the way this weather's going, we don't get any moisture, seeding's not gonna take on this fall.
Not gonna be affected.
Well, Kurt, and maybe Jeff, you may know this, so stormwater, we're talking all of the stuff in the streets, all of the drains off the homes.
Yes.
Is that basically everything in that whole
Yes,
addition will drain into this retention pond?
yeah.
And we're
Put
putting in
into
a,
2 of them, it's
Okay.
split, some will go into that new retention pond, the other will go into our wetland.
Yeah, it's like a 75-25, so like about 20 to 25% of the water goes to that retention pond. 75% of the water from that acreage goes into the wetland
Yeah.
for the county.
Which it always went into the wetland, even before, that's where all that ground went. But, it just wasn't enough drainage for us to have an adequate wetland to hold water.
You're talking about the retention pond south of the Discovery Center on the backside.
It's back by the Arboretum. The Arboretum kind of surrounds it, and that is just mainly cattails and stuff like that. But we have water control structure on there that we can raise and lower the water if we want, so we can have it higher or lower, but for the most part,
Never had any water in there.
there's never any water in there. No.
okay, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
There was some discussion about possibly adding some language to this, so.
Should be as the vice chair to execute upon, I would recommend the vice chair execute upon addition of the language to clarify how would you
The
word it, Jim?
long-term maintenance of
Yeah.
structures.
You recommend
And
that as a friendly
there's
amendment to the
also
motion.
some modifications that just need to happen on the signature page. I apologize, I just saw this morning, but it says that the board's approving this by resolution, and it talks about, it has a place for us to say that Leslie saw this vice chair in this case sign it, but there's not a signature line for her, so it's just a little cleanup that needs to be done there.
Yeah, I think with Alan's departure, we had a little drop in the process here. We'll get that
And at
worked
this
out.
time, we're not agreeing to take on that property. That's.
No.
come at
That'll
a
come later.
date.
The
And-
property's a separate,
Yeah.
issue. This is the easements for the structures. Okay,
And
so,
Jim, do we have, and I'm sure you probably do, we have drawings of these layouts,
Yes.
piping, dimensions?
Yeah, you want me to?
No, no, I just wanted to know if we had it.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
three, attached to the easement are three exhibits, which show the two separate, easements we're talking about and just the general
Length of
properties
footage,
that's been
how much it
surveyed.
is, yeah.
Right, so all of that's there. It's a very standard easement, you know, the enlarge was a concern of mine, having looked at it, making sure we accept it when it's in a condition we're willing to accept, and then long-term clarification on that triangle piece, that we're not gonna be responsible for any of the maintenance on that.
Yeah, and I think
even though
that's
it's property.
I think that's a good good catch that the city needs to be crystal clear that they accept that infrastructure.
So I can propose some language to add to it, get it back to Mr. Eichelberger, and have Nancy review it before I send it, so I don't know whether I can work on that today.
And normally in those situations, the city would take on that ownership as long as they were installed per, you know, the.
Yeah,
specifications.
they've reviewed camera footage, they've accepted the fact that it's done to plan and specifications, so they don't have any issue with it, but it
That's
just
kind of
needs
an
to,
odd thing
it just
because-
needs to be clear that they've accepted that,
It's
it's,
just a little
Pointed
triangle
out.
back there, and so it's kind of an oddity that leads to the city, you know, they don't have any property around it. So it's just kind of an odd, it's, you know, normally if they took it over, it'd be part of a larger thing, and it is, but it's just a little piece that's kind of an island out there, so the county owning it
I think
makes
it was,
sense.
it's kind of modeled off of the property off of Folium across from the school. And if you've seen there, they've got the same type of a structure and easement on a structure, and they've got one up off of Mulberry, and so the city commonly does this, I guess. But it's a good catch, so. All right, so where are we at? We had a motion by,
I made the motion, but
And-
I think it would be Nathan's motion.
and we had a friendly
modified.
amendment on the modification. Do we
I
have that?
think I would rather have what he's already.
Okay,
So-
so
I made the
you wanna
motion
withdraw
amendment.
your motion?
Yeah.
And Nathan's gonna make a motion.
I will move to approve, subject to the changes we discussed, including,
Language clean.
language clarifying the,
Ownership.
the ownership of it, language about the vice chair accepting, and the, amendment of the signature blocks and such. Does that give you what you need, Nancy?
Yep,
Okay.
I just have a question. So who's responsible for addressing that retention pond and seeding that?
The developer is responsible for that.
Okay,
This time,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I want to make clear, we are not accepting that, and so before we would accept that, it would have to all be
Yeah.
fixed.
Okay.
That's part of their agreement with the city, that they have to do that, and it's on a list, and,
Sure, sure.
yeah.
And it's a good comment in regard to if we don't get any rain, on that situation, but, you'd still be able to frost seed that, if, push comes to shove
Yeah.
on that as well, so. Okay, very good. I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Okay, so I had a motion by Nathan.
I'll second.
Do I have a second by Scott? Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. And Leslie, note that I've recused myself from the vote. Okay. Item number 8 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the September 14th, 2020 regular meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan, second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Correspondence, Santos.
I had a follow-up call with, the Johnson's inspection group that we had for the maintenance building, last week in scheduling a meeting. I reached out to, some contacts that I had from that same group that we had in the past. They apologized up and down in regards to the challenges they've had with scheduling, and they contacted me back later the next day explaining that they were gonna have a technician there on Friday to finish up the inspections on the building. And that if that wasn't done, they would, make sure that it would get addressed. I reached out to Oscar, this morning asking him if that was complete for that maintenance building on, Friday, and he did let me know that they did come, and they did get that completed. So now we're just waiting on the fire marshals to come in and now coordinate that final.
I think that
Approval.
city can do that. right?
Correct, the fire,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
city
the fire
will do
chief
that. It's
can
just
do
a
it,
matter of now getting that, the city fire
Right.
marshal, I'm sorry. I also had a call on G28 and some of the project timing. I followed up with Keith on that, explaining to him kind of the questions that were presented to me. And Keith replied back to the actual homeowner, CC'd me in on some emails in regards to clarifying. I was confused at some of the comments that I'd had, but obviously the project is getting into a stage that is obviously gonna need more work when you're doing complete demo and putting in new versus just modifying existing on some of the ones they've had. So I followed up with that. I'm gonna try to schedule something with Keith today to go look at it sometime this week if possible. I got a call from COVID questions, numbers and testing. I reached out to Christy on that. And that's all I had for correspondence.
Okay. Nate?
I'd forgotten to tell you, Leslie, I actually ran into that technician on Friday from Johnson Controls. I spoke with him and he assured me that he was getting himself over there very quickly, and I thanked him for that. So I was very pleased to see that. But that's all I had.
Okay. Only correspondence I had is, met with a group on housing, with the Community Foundation, the RLF kind of concept we talked about with that housing funds that this board has had for a number of years. In my tenure on the board, so that's over 10 years now, that's been kind of languishing. And then I also had, and I forgot a couple, Leslie, I apologize. I did get a follow-up email from a gentleman, and I don't recall, but I did respond back on the ATV, UTV potential approval or process in the county. And I indicated to them that we were drafting a resolution or a policy that once that was drafted, there would be a public hearing process with at least 3 readings. And so I told them 6 to 8 weeks would be an optimistic timeline. And so I think they were understanding of that, and that certainly we would publish anything we are preparing to do. I also had a MPW reached out to me, and I had suggested that they put kind of Eric and potentially Keith on their list. They have, while MPW's service area for electric is fairly well regulated and there's not a lot of things, they do have water service outlying outside the city limits and communication services. And they are interested in working with residents on opportunities there, and so they wanted to know who they should link up with. So I've kind of got them with Eric, and Eric did a great job of responding back, and so hopefully that we'll be aware, and if they're starting to do anything out in the county, maybe they'll communicate with Keith and Eric, and as they generally know what's going on and where. So, and that was all my communications. Scott?
I had a resident that had stopped me this week and wanted to know if there was anything going to be done as far as legalizing ATVs, UTVs, and so on and so forth. And I brought up if he had heard about or participated at the hearing several weeks ago, and he was not familiar that had even taken place. And so that was an interesting conversation because it spun right around to what we've been working with, but he was unaware. And so I conveyed to him the exact information Jeff just spoke of the process in place and you know, an optimistic time frame would be 2 months, and so it was just an ironic conversation. That's all I had.
Doug?
Correspondence, I got a call from Jerry Holiday on Keokuk. We pretty well covered that today. I received an email from a citizen with some questions and concerns that were more of a county attorney questions, so I turned those over to Jim Berry. And I got a call from Jim Meredith wanting to thank the county highway department for a fantastic job of cleaning ditches and repairing his driveway, and he said just did a lot of good out there for him.
Good.
And that's all I had for
Okay.
correspondence.
How about committee reports, Doug? Did you have any committees last week?
Wednesday, September 16th at noon, we met with Wilton Development, and Becky Allgood's office is moving from the bank to the city hall. And we went and looked at that facility where her new office will be. That she'll be moving there shortly. And Thursday, September 17th at 8 o'clock was Fair Board meeting. And that's all I had for
Okay.
meetings.
Scott?
On Wednesday, the 16th, I had the Board of Health, which obviously the main topic is always COVID. And also that day I had Riverbend Transit, and nothing much has changed there in regard to that service either with the COVID situation and everything up in the air. So it's just a work in progress is all it is. That's all I had.
Okay. And I had no committee reports. Nathan?
I had Veterans Affairs Commission. Not a whole lot going on. This Friday there is a mental health webinar that's taking place that I'm going to try and participate in. But other than that, that's it.
Santos?
I had on the 8th, on the 15th, I'm sorry, I had an ISAC meeting going over the 2021 legislative recommendations, and had many discussions in regards to different items, mental health, water quality, ATVs for secondary roads as a potential state recommendation. And it was interesting on that one is they were saying they were basically recommending that the counties have jurisdiction for making those versus somebody coming saying a broad, approval for across the state. A very good meeting, just kind of recommendations for the 2021 session. And then on the 18th, we had that housing meeting.
Okay. All right, items with the administration office. Item number 11A, discussion of possible action to appoint Jamie Boston to the Muscatine County Civil Service Commission to fill a vacant term ending 6/30 of 2024. Nancy, did you want to say anything about this, or? I think we
guess-
talked about it last week,
Yeah,
right?
this is the only application that we received by the deadline that we had posted, and he certainly meets the qualifications.
And I will just say, Jamie is a colleague in my law office. I'll be recusing myself, but I can speak very highly of him, and he knows his stuff.
Okay,
We'll make a motion to approve.
so I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Doug. Any further discussion?
Just thanking him for applying and being
Yeah,
a member
absolutely.
on it.
Always
We
thank
need
folks
to-
for their willingness to serve. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Item 11B, discussion of possible action authorizing the chair to execute a FY 2021 camp grant contract with Muscatine County Drug Task Force in the amount of $8,000.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Item C, discussion of possible action to accept a proposal from Control System Specialists to replace or upgrade the Muscatine County Jail building controls in the amount of $320,000.
Check.
Nancy, was this a budgeted capital expenditure, or what are we doing on that?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with this. Sherry's, out of the office ill today, and I tried to reach the sheriff before the meeting and could not get an answer from him. I don't believe this is an item that we have budgeted, but I will certainly follow up on it and get the information once I can get ahold of the sheriff.
And this appeared to be, building controls, not, I know in the past we've had issues with, locks and things like that and contractors, and so this looks like a replacement of all the building controls.
Right.
Okay, and then, and is this vendor the what, is this the, I mean, I don't know if this is the old building, the new building, it wasn't really very clear to me on that. If this consolidates all the control systems for both buildings.
I believe that it does, but again.
It looks
I
like
will-
it also deals a little bit with the courthouse as well.
Yeah.
And the geothermal, the system there,
Yep.
okay.
Who's, I don't, do we normally bid this? I mean, who's doing all, who's maintaining, who's managing this work? I guess
I can't answer any of those questions, unfortunately.
I don't know, I honestly, I'd like to move to table it until next week, until we have some of those answers.
Yeah, I'm
Sympathetic to that.
I'm comfortable with that. I don't know much about this. I don't understand the depth and scope, and this is a pretty large project, and I think that's probably a service contract because this is really software as most of it, so I know the bidding requirements are different, but again, this is a pretty significant chunk of change. And I wanna make sure that we're doing the right thing there.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion to table. Do we need a second on that, or?
Second.
So I have a motion to table by Santos with a second by Nathan. All in favor of tabling this, until we can get some clarification?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion is tabled until further, pending further clarification.
Absolutely.
Item 11D is discussion and possible action to approve a proposal from Muscatine County Historic Preservation Commission for additional research to the National Register eligibility of the St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church in Nichols, Iowa, in the amount of $1,000.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I have a motion by Santos, second by Doug. Any further discussion?
I can tell you that the funds for this would come out of the historic preservation
Right. And this,
funds that are budgeted each year.
and by the documentation provided, it looks like, we'd already approved a process, and there's further work required to get additional information, so,
Right.
it's pretty clear. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Other, Nancy, did you have anything else for the board this
Do
morning?
not,
Okay. Item number 12, to receive information from county employees. Brian?
Good morning. I'm going to give you the latest COVID-19 information that I have, and this is based on Friday at 4 p.m. Muscatine County, positive cases 1,053, total recovered 872. Unfortunately, we've had 53 deaths in the county. Our long-term care facility outbreaks, Premier Estate has 21 positive, 12 have recovered. Simpson Memorial is at 28 positive. Muscatine County Emergency Management and Trinity Muscatine Public Health, we continue to meet with the school districts weekly, address their concerns. Presently, the percentage of positive analysis for Muscatine school districts is 6.3. In regards to information about asking and finding out statistics for COVID-19 in Muscatine County, residents can go to coronavirus.iowa.gov and get this information. Lastly, on Friday Governor Reynolds has proclaimed September 21st to the 25th, 2020 as Emergency Management Appreciation Week.
Okay.
I have a question, Brian. Can you give any insight, in regard to, school is 3 weeks in now, and, obviously fall sports. Is there any type of indicator, with, 21 days in of any type of increased activity to your knowledge?
Not that I'm hearing. I will meet and call today and kind of get an update. I believe we do have a meeting this afternoon with schools, the districts, just to generally see what's going on. I think last week, if I recall correctly, the percent positive analysis was 7.1 or 7.2.
Yeah, I was just curious on that with the, that's the only significant, group gatherings that I'm aware of would be schools
Right.
and sports, so.
And I recall a couple weeks ago, sophomore football team was up at North Scott and had a cancel because it was determined that a North Scott player had tested positive. So I know Muscatine, the Trinity Muscatine Public Health is working on that and keeping on top of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have other? Mr. Barry?
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We had our second offsite jury trial last week, or at least selected a jury and then came back to courthouse. Continue to use the school, central auditorium. Just again, a big thank you to the school system for the use of their facility. It is important, the cleaning and the cooperation we've gotten has been, it's noteworthy. As a part of that, we've been investigating and discussing the possibility of purchasing some wireless microphones and headsets that would allow participants to better able to move and participate, particularly when we get down to the armory. They have a single mic, and when we get down there, we're gonna need 4 microphones or headsets, as the case may be, to do the trial that we're scheduled to do there in December. Verified that that system would work in the courthouse here as well with the system we already have in place. Verified that it would work with central auditorium. Primarily the headsets would be the important thing at that point. Several of the assistants would prefer a headset with the masks, not having to try to speak into a microphone. Hearing people from behind the mask is a challenge. And that the system that were purchased would work with any long-term system that we might purchase. The thinking as of last week was to go ahead and have my office use the fine monies to purchase that system. I've got a couple of quotes. I talked with Sherry about it several times, and with Nancy this week. But I just wanted to let you know that that's in process. If we do that and we submit and get any reimbursement from either the state or the federal government for the COVID activities, then that will go back into the fine collections money. But that's kind of the plan we're looking at going forward. That way, the county attorney's office would have control of it, and then we just have to discuss in the future if other portions of the county wanted to use the system. It will have the 4 wireless, the 4 headsets, the mixer, and basically 4 speakers, so that we could set up around a gymnasium type setting or at a church, or if we ever get to that point where we can have ability to sort of surround the sound and we get rid of some of the echo from just one end to the other. So that's in process. Also met last week again with the drug task force. They meet quarterly. Just wanted to update the board that we've been looking at modifying the drug task force 2080 agreement that we currently have to include some other governmental entities. So it's more in line with what we're doing today versus what was done back in 1999. So I think we could get the final modifications in place to that and get that done here before the December meeting is the hope. As a part of the drug task force, there are certain monies that need to be managed. Those were primarily being managed out of the county attorney's office, which was the agreement and the understanding of everybody that participated. I've moved those over to county administration so that those funds are being managed by county administration and not by somebody in our office. The person that managed those left employment with the county, which sort of left us in a bit of a lurch, and for continuity purposes, I think it probably makes more sense to put it over there, and that way when the state auditors are here with you, they can have, otherwise they had to come over and meet with whoever in our office to deal with it. So I've taken that step as well, and the new agreement would go forward in that fashion. So those are just a couple of things that are going on in the office in terms of information that you might find helpful or beneficial in the future. You're not surprised when you purchase a system or somebody might question you, or whether you get questions about the drug task force, because eventually you'll have to approve the 28D agreement, just like the city would, and Cedar County would, and the Wisa County would, and anybody that's going to participate. Any questions? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Chip.
Okay, anybody else?
I do have one thing. Jen Watkins, who's our Veterans Affairs Director, requested that we announce in this meeting that the Mobile Vet Center will be set up at Muscatine Community College campus today from 10 to 1.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy.
Mhm.
Okay, hearing no more.
I did have one comment. Nancy, I knew we had talked a couple months back in regards to a city and a county joint meeting. I know that that's challenging with the COVID, but I thought we talked about eventually trying even to do a online or even a, web, not a web, just basically a go-to type
It's a
meeting.
go-to type meeting.
And I know you're busy, but if that's something that we could put out there on the forecast maybe before the end of the year, would be nice to just kind of meet that. That was a discussion I think we had for part of our goals, to try to help continue to have good communications with the city, even when we start looking at budgets and upcoming projects. And if we can't do it maybe we do it in the beginning of the year, but it would be something that I'd like to make sure that we hopefully address.
Yeah, then I see that it's a good point. There's a new city administrator I know, and it might be a good idea if we try to do something to introduce her to the county and county administration staff, and certainly some of our key officials.
And if we want to do it after November's, schedule for elections, because I know Leslie's busy. That's fine. We can do that, and if there's possibly a week in December, I'd like to see that. If not, then January, maybe late February being the latest. But just want to make sure that I kind of bring that up. I know we've just put that off after COVID, and I think it's something that I still want to make sure that we help address.
Yep, good point.
Okay, yep.
That's all I had.
All right, so seeing no others, next is items would be received comments from the public. Do we have anyone from the public that indicated, so we see one person on the phone. If your phone is unmuted, if you have an issue you'd like to discuss, please state your name and address and issue.
Don Briggs, Kirtland. How you doing, guys?
Good, Don, how are you?
Not too bad. I wasn't going to say anything, but Scott, when Brian was talking, Scott brought up about the schools and like football and everything. As of last Friday night, including Durant and L&M, the schools has been the good for the players, that they had not had to cancel their games for them, but they could not play a game because the other team that they were going to play had tested positive, and they had to sit out for 2 weeks. Like Durant was supposed to play somebody, and they had to sit out for 2 weeks. West Liberty was supposed to go up to Tipton last week, and Thursday Tipton came up positive, so, West Liberty was looking around Friday for, somebody to play against, and they ended up playing against Lisbon because they had a team that canceled out on them, so, far as Muscatine County and like I said, those other two schools, the schools has not canceled any football game due to, in our county for that.
Okay,
So, that's all I have.
okay, thank you, Don. Do we have any others this morning? Christie doesn't indicate there's anyone else. Okay, so hearing no others.
I have one comment I'd like to make if I could at the very end. The combines are just beginning to roll these last few days, so everybody just needs to be aware of the increased big equipment traffic that's gonna be on the roads. And just be safe out there, folks. Be a little patient and be conscientious. Let these guys get this work done and everybody come home safe.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Meeting is adjourned.